Blog Talk Radio.
America. Just because I'm so very tired from staying out late and partying all weekend, more on that in a minute, doesn't mean the sensation that is sweeping the nation will ever stop or ever quit. That's right, this is progressive conservatism. Therapy for the partisan soul, no additives or preservatives, all natural insight, goodness, commentary, and analyzation. That's what we've got here for you. Mark Radulich, that's me, America's premier political shrink and pundit par excellence. That's what they called me back in the old neighborhood. And boy, have we got a great show lined up for you today. In just a few moments, I'll be bringing out a third special guest host for today's program. He's in the studio right now and chomping at the bit to lend his opinions and insight to this broadcast. Today we'll be discussing the race issue in New Orleans, what it means when Ray Nagin says we need the chocolate back into vanilla. And he said it just like that, too. My review of the book Sweet Deception by Dr. Joseph Mercola, and what it's like being an adult college student after you've already entered the workforce. All of that, plus a very special report, and your phone calls on today's broadcast of Progressive Conservatism. As per usual, I want to give out the number. If you want to call in, you can call in at any time during the show and participate in the discussion or bring something new to the table. That number is 646-915-8862. You can also chat with me on Instant Messenger at MARKKIND1976. That's AOL Instant Messenger, Mark Kind, MARKKIND1976. So, why was I out partying all weekend? Well, actually, my third guest host came into town, and we went clubbing Saturday night, and we went clubbing last night. And it's been a long time since I've gone clubbing with him. I left New York in January of 2005. When I moved to Miami and I moved up here to Tampa, I've gone dancing with my wife a few times, especially around the time that we got married. But we haven't really gone to the kinds of places that I used to frequent when I lived in New York. Very special guest host and I used to go into the Village at least once a week and dance in the New Wave and goth industrial clubs. That's right, America's premier political shrink used to go to the old goth club. No, I did not write sad poetry, at least not after high school. But anyway, so we used to go out dancing, and by the time I left New York, I had gotten considerably burnt out. I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't stand the people there. I remember, and I think this is what set it up for me, as we're walking down the street in the Village one night, and it was probably like 2003, 2004, and somebody had spray-painted Bush, and the S was a swastika. I think, not that I had any particular affection for Bush, but just the whole miserableness of New York just got to me. And when my parents decided that they were going to move, I ended up moving to Florida with them. So I haven't done too much in the way of clubbing. But I'll tell you, after 2-3 years of not doing it, the Saturday night that we went out to a club called The Castle in Tampa. and I had a great time. Just dancing and hearing the music from back when I really used to go consistently brought back a lot of really positive memories. And I remembered just how much I enjoyed going dancing and being in places like that and how comfortable I felt, as opposed to the times that my wife has dragged me to the Hard Rock Cafe and I have felt considerably uncomfortable in that atmosphere. So you can imagine how excited I was the next night when we went to Orlando to do much of the same thing. And being in Orlando last night reminded me of why I hated going clubbing by the end of my tenure. The place was so crowded you couldn't dance. And it was, I don't know if you've ever gone dancing before. Call in if you have, 646-915-8862. But so help me God, is there a reason why people need to walk across the floor to stand against the other side of the wall? Or just parade through the dance floor and then get to the middle and either start making out or just stand there? Ugh. In any case, so I was sardined in, and no one has any kind of respect for space. So I got like girls just falling all over me and guys falling all over me, and it was just. And then the music sucked. I think we'd hit the high water mark for suckiness in music at a club when they played They Might Be Giants, Istanbul, Not Constantinople, followed by Losing My Religion by R.E.M. Not bad songs, not the songs you want to dance to. So, I'm a bit tired. And then my car got towed. That was a lot of fun. So, having said that, Saturday night good, or Friday night good, Saturday night considerably bad. I'm going to bring out the third guest host. He's been my best friend for the last 30 years, my dancing buddy, and somebody who, when no one else wanted to talk politics with me, was there, my good friend, Tom. Tom, what's going on?
Wow, what a great intro song. Now, why couldn't I hear this last night?
What was that for the many, many people who are listening to the most popular show on Blog Talk Radio?
Oh, that would be Wolfsheim in Time, which would have been something more likely we would have heard Friday night at the Castle. But alas, it doesn't really fit in with R.E.M. and They Might Be Giants at a hot 80s dance club at Independent Bar.
Yeah, if you're in Orlando and you're looking for a good night out with, new wave and industrial and goth music, the Independent Bar, not the place to go.
Well, it did start out well. I mean, they played Erasure, for example, which is always fun. They played Depeche Mode, and then I guess they just decided they didn't want to play any more dance music after that.
They also shut the bar down at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have to deal with that in New York or in New Orleans, for that matter.
Or anywhere, because they didn't shut the bar down at 1 o'clock in Tampa either.
I've seen hotels do that, but I've never seen an actual nightclub do that.
No. Okay, moving on. Let's hit our first topic of the night. Now, Tom and I are old hands at going to the city of New Orleans, otherwise Ray Nagin calls it the Chocolate City. We've been there a number of times. I know every time that I've gone with Tom, and he's been there a few more times than I, and we both consider it to be our city. A very special place to go, a time that we've thoroughly enjoyed. So you can imagine how distraught I was when I saw this article this past week reported on Reuters. New Orleans struggles to keep its black character. On Martin Luther King Day last year, New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin famously said his city would be chocolate at the end of the day, a remark meant to encourage African Americans to return after Hurricane Katrina. At the time, it drew accusations of racial divisiveness, as it should have, and a barrage of jokes, as it should have. T-shirts went on sale in the French Quarter portraying Nagin as Willy Wonka, and maps of the city were drawn with neighborhoods named Godiva, Hershey, and M&M's. That's damn funny. But a year later, it is no laughing matter. New Orleans, one of the most culturally distinct African-American cities, is struggling to regain its black character. And I think this is the line that just tipped my BS meter and probably sent me over the edge. That was, "We need the chocolate back in the vanilla," housing activist Ndisha Jukali shouted to a crowd last month to protest the demolition of public housing damaged by Katrina. but there were only 20 black people listening, just a fraction of the whites who came to support the cause. Now, that's funny. New Orleans was 67% African-American before Katrina and 28% white. Now in a city with less than half the previous population, blacks account for 47% and whites 43%. It will never be the same in my lifetime. We already know that, said Giucali. The forces that control the redevelopment are going to string this thing out for at least 5 years, and people can't wait that long. I think there are two ways to look at this story, and the first being, I think it's summed up very well in this last line, that the forces that control redevelopment are going to string this thing. In other words, they're going to make it so that impoverished black people have a more difficult time and a longer time to re-emigrate back to New Orleans. So her point appears to be that the only way the chocolate can come back to the vanilla is to rebuild the public housing, redole out public assistance, and continue to welcome back impoverished blacks with open arms by giving them handouts. Because the middle-class blacks are not having a problem returning to New Orleans. As a matter of fact, they are coming back in droves, as are the middle-class white people. And, of course, she can't have that.
Well, it's obviously clear that the government is going to, in its best interest, give out various programs to actually encourage people to come back, especially businesses. So it's in the best interest of the middle class and obviously the upper class to return. And it's not in the government's interest to have impoverished people that have a bigger tendency towards criminal behavior. Just look at Houston in 2006, where all their crime rates and murder rates had increased by over in double-digit percentages over from where it was the year before Katrina.
Now, let's make a point about that. The rise in crime rate was directly contributed to the immigration from blacks in New Orleans to Houston. Their point being that all the people, or most of the people rather, that have moved from New Orleans to Houston contributed to the rise in crime rate. It's really funny, actually, because there's one of the articles that I was looking at while I was doing research on this where I think it was one of the sheriffs in Texas said, yeah, we don't cotton to that kind of behavior here in Houston.
It's disappointing because the city of Houston did open up their arms so wide for the just ravaged citizens of New Orleans, and they completely. And then, obviously we're not going to say that every person that emigrated to Houston for that period of time is a criminal, but there was clearly the mobsters and gangsters from New Orleans definitely made their presence known quickly in New Orleans since their rates went up so fast.
Right. And that's not to say that the city of Houston hasn't been able to fight back and control them. I mean, they basically said they're not going to tolerate it, and I think they've increased efforts to combat the crime. But that's not, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it did increase.
And in stark contrast, of course, the only city in 2006 that actually had its crime rate and murder rate decrease was New Orleans. But I guess as people are returning, you're now seeing there are news stories where that has now changed, and New Orleans is working its way back to being the murder capital of the country.
Yes, it's gaining on Orlando, the happiest place on earth. However, aside from the fact that you have this issue of, I think what I took exception to is her saying that it doesn't appear that the city has its character unless the impoverished New Orleans citizens return. My question was, if you're trying to attract people to come back to the city or attract tourism in the city, why would you promote the worst in people's behavior of that population? Nobody, in other words, Michael Bloomberg from New York City doesn't say, come visit New York, you'll get mugged and raped on a regular basis. Nobody says that, but yet there's this attribute, we need to rebuild the public housing, which, again, are hives for drug abuse, drug dealing, murder. Public housing typically does not have a good reputation, but in order for her to bring back the black people, she feels that this needs to be rebuilt, and then goes on to say, well, it's racist that they're not building it with any kind of speed, to which I would say to her, what person in their right mind is going to rush out to build public housing when it, A, doesn't work very well, and B, attracts so many problems?
Clearly, it's not making any money for anybody, so why is it even in the government's best interest to work on public housing when they still have to rebuild infrastructure? Let's look at just the Superdome. The Superdome has been packed the entire year for the Saints, and the fans have responded in kind. The place is packed. The fans are huge, That's obviously what's in the better interest for New Orleans is to actually do things like that, where people are going to go into the Superdome and spend their money, and put money into the tax doles where they weren't before, working on things like the French Quarter, trams, Canal Street, any spot in there that the tourists are going and spending their money. That's how you rebuild a city. You don't rebuild the city by starting with public housing. And on his other point, you would never hear Mayor Bloomberg promote people to move to New York City by saying we have a great public housing development program. That's the last thing he wants to discuss. He wants to discuss his lowered crime rates, his financial surpluses.
You see a lot of signs throughout New York City, like Brooklyn, forget about it. What you don't see is New York City, the most projectness city going. Welcome to the projects.
Yeah, I don't think when they have foreign visitors from abroad coming into New York that they've got on their maps the projects in Brooklyn or the Bronx. That's not where they're going, and that's not what they're going to promote.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to, when they were considering where they hold the Republican National Convention, it was Madison Square Garden or the East New York projects.
Now, back on this woman's comments about bringing the chocolate back, while following on Nagin's comments, it's not a numbers game in that the more black people that are there, the better chance of it retaining its black character. The black character is ingrained in New Orleans, with legendary figures like Marie Laveau, the Voodoo Queen, Louis Armstrong, arguably one of the best jazz musicians that have lived. Those things aren't leaving. There's no way you can't remove that cultural theming from a city. If
tomorrow there not a single black person lived in New Orleans, it would never stop being having a distinctly African-American stream in it because of the influence of jazz, Cajun food, Zydeco music. I mean, they've left an indelible mark on the city, and it's not going to go away in the absence of people who don't contribute to the culture to begin with. Because, frankly, the murderers, rapists, and drug dealers are not showing me anything cultural that I couldn't see in, Tampa or anywhere else that I've ever lived.
And New Orleans isn't just about its black character. I mean, when people think of New Orleans, they think of the Bayou and they think of Cajuns. And the Cajuns are French Canadians that emigrated down to the South. And, there's a French market. It has an indelible French touch to the city, even with just how the city is designed. It's probably one of the few European cities in the country. There's a French market and an Italian market. Those are separate than its black character, and it's the mix of all the characters that make it such a fabulous city.
One last point on this, and I said this was a race story, and that is when someone says, well, we need the black, it's struggling with its black character, there's already debate in this country between folks like Juan Williams of the Fox News Channel and NPR and Bill Cosby, who was eviscerated for making comments like the following, versus guys like Cornel West, any number of black rap producers, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, who the Reverend John is for in the presidency, 2008. And that is, the black character is either a choice between the thug, illiterate criminal, or the whore, baby factory woman, or is the black character any number of successful black Americans who are educated and do contribute to the culture in any number of ways. And the problem I have with people like Nagin and Giucali is they tend to, while they're particularly successful, I think Tom can tell you something about Nagin in a moment, they don't lend any credence to the belief that the black character is the criminal. They actually, they are an example of how there's a very wide stream of affluent culture within blacks themselves. But yet anytime you talk about, well, what is the black character, Jay-Z comes up, which I think is ridiculous. And again, it goes back to the argument of, when you say we need to bring the black character back, is this what you're referring to? You want to bring the crime back? It's not that you can stop it at this point, but I think you had something you wanted to say about Nagin.
Well, the one thing that I'm surprised by, because obviously Nagin's real claim to fame, he wasn't a politician, he was just a business person, and I'm sort of surprised by the differences between him and Bloomberg. Clearly Nagin wasn't a businessman on Bloomberg standards. Bloomberg is a multi-billionaire, and Nagin, I don't even know. Clearly he's not at that level. But Bloomberg, when he took over New York, has been running the city like a business. And Nagin needs to start doing the same thing, because there's no reason for them to have as little money as they do and as little money as they've spent. I mean, even pre-Katrina, it's very obvious to anyone that's been to New Orleans that you have to wonder where that money is going. There's a lot of money that just comes for free. You know, when people from another state come in and spend their tax money, that money is just basically bonus money that is just not being used properly, because you can walk through the main thoroughfare on Canal Street, and it's dirty and filthy. And I wanted to bring up that, you know, I haven't been to Atlanta, but that's always the contrast in New Orleans as far as being a black city. And I don't hear Atlanta promoting itself as high on public housing. What I do hear is my black coworkers say, wow, there's a lot of really good jobs down there. The living is really cheap. You know, I might move down there. I don't hear people talking about that about New Orleans. I don't hear any black coworkers wanting to move there. What I do hear is Atlanta, where corporations are setting up shop because it's so favorable towards business.
All right. He has waited long enough. We're going to bring out the DJ Jazzy Jeff to My Fresh Prince, the good Reverend, Mr. John.
Well, my style of stress relief sometimes disturbs the peace. The police show up, chuck donuts in my yard. And while the Zeppelin's playing around, they run off my party crowd. They cuff my wrists and throw me down so hard. Why does everybody want to kick my ass? I'm just trying to have a little fun for all the ones who can. And just because I kiss the prettiest girls and I drive my truck too fast, why does everybody want to kick my ass?
Is it just me, or do your theme songs get longer and longer every week?
The hook keeps on getting further and further away. But I already cut next week's theme song, and it's kind of shorter, so that's good.
Well, that's good. How you doing?
Good. I'm still stuck in Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Do you know the song?
I know the song. I had the unfortunate task of having to work with They Might Be Giants once. But I'm just concerned, because you guys know, going to any bar or anywhere on Long Island, there are a number of questionable DJ choices.
A number? Tom and I used to frequently walk out every time they played Tainted Love.
But They Might Be Giants, probably the most arbitrary I've ever heard. And I was at a bar the other night where they played the song that Mark Wahlberg sung in the movie Rockstar.
Wow.
I got to apologize. I'm a little unprepared right now. I was actually on assignment this weekend.
You were on assignment?
Yes, in New Orleans.
Really? You went to New Orleans, and what did you discover?
Well, I read your piece, and I actually just started to follow football this year, became a Saints fan, and I wanted to learn more. And as it turns out, I knew some people who knew some people who knew Ray Nagin. So they got me an interview with them. So I fly down to New Orleans. This is for the past weekend. And, you know, we go out. He takes me into a couple of the titty bars, and we went to go inspect the levees, and the levees are still
what
standing.
Kind of bars, John? This is a program for not just adults, but kids, too.
Those bars where, like, the girls take their clothes off?
There you go.
Okay. And we went to go inspect the levees, and the levees are still standing. You'll be happy to know.
Will the levees dry?
When the levees break. Mm-hmm. But so when all this was done, I sat down with the mayor. I showed him your article, and I said, you know, do you have a comment on this? And
hey, where are the white women at?
That wasn't your cue.
Sorry. Go ahead. Say it one more time.
And here's what Ray Nagin had to say.
Hey, where are the white women at?
It's even funnier because we messed that up.
and I also have rebuttal from Reverend Sharpton.
Oh, yeah? What's the... Oh. I forgot about that one.
Number 2.
So we decided we'd ride this donkey as far as it would take us.
God, and I'm the one not prepared?
This show, we said, was going to be a train wreck, and we figured with the three hosts on and everyone wanting to get a word in edgewise that it was going to be hard to maintain. No, the problem is I don't know my freaking sound cues anymore. This is what happens when I only get 4 hours of sleep a night 3 days in a row.
Well, whose fault is that?
Yeah, maybe a little less time with writing up intros and more time on production.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
I should start writing in my sound cues. I did that the first couple of weeks, and I still messed them up. What am I saying? I had a whole thing about pants, and I completely missed my own cue.
And your own pants.
And my own pants. All right, let's move on. I reviewed this week on markradulich.com the book by Dr. Joseph Mercola, Sweet Deception, how Splenda, NutraSweet, and the FDA are hazardous to your health. And I find this to be an interesting topic in the sense that many people are miseducated on what exactly artificial sweeteners are, what they do for you, what their history is, and what this is doing to your health. And just as an aside, more often than not, people who are having any number of medical issues, they continue to take drugs, painkillers, and misuse these things in an ongoing battle with their deteriorating health. And sometimes just a simple change in diet is what's called for if you don't know that what you're eating is actually poisonous to you. And I'll give you an example. Many soft drinks, diet drinks, in fact, one that I was particularly fond of, the Diet Lipton citrus iced tea, green tea rather, contained aspartame. Aspartame, as you'll find out if you read the book Sweet Deception, actually started out as a pesticide. And the scientist that was creating, and this actually happens a few times throughout the history of artificial sweeteners, is they were experimenting with different combinations of chemicals for the purposes of creating pesticides and such. And he accidentally got some on his hands, and he licked his hands and found out that it was super sweet, and said, let's try using this as an artificial sweetener, as a replacement for sugar. And while they did do tests on it, and they found that this was probably not such a good idea, and I'll tell you what some of the issues are with aspartame in a moment, the company that put aspartame out, who Donald Rumsfeld used to work for, as a matter of fact, ended up changing a lot of the studies or burying some of the studies or only promoting the internal studies from scientists that were paid to make sure that this looked good, and then ended up being approved by the FDA, who is unfortunately very much corrupted by lobby money from the sugar business or the artificial sweetener business, the pharmaceutical business especially.
So, Mark, if I understand you correctly, Donald Rumsfeld took that philosophy of cherry-picking information as far as artificial sweetener goes and then applied it to the Iraq War?
Yes, as a matter of fact, he did. Now, it's funny how history goes in concentric circles. So one of the things I wanted to talk about as far as aspartame and its toxic effects, and you can find this information on health-report.co.uk, and that is acute toxicity reactions occur within 48 hours of ingestion of an aspartame-containing product. Chronic toxicity effects occur anywhere from several days of use to appearing a number of years, 1 to 20, after the beginning of aspartame use. Potential toxicity effects that would be nearly impossible for the user to recognize to link to aspartame. Now, aspartame, for those that don't know what the brand is NutraSweet. So if you're using anything with NutraSweet, or if you read the ingredient and you see phenylalkyline or aspartame, this is what it is. And some of the effects that it has, decreased vision, pain in one or both of your eyes, decreased tears, trouble with contact lens, blindness in one or both eyes, a buzzing or ringing in your ear, severe intolerance for noise, marked impairment of hearing, some neurological things, headaches, dizziness, unsteadiness of both, confusion, memory loss, well, that would explain a lot for me, severe drowsiness and sleepiness, ditto, pins and needles, tingling, numbness of the limbs, convulsions, grand mal epileptic attacks, for those of you who have a seizure disorder, petite mal attacks and absences, severe slurring of speech, severe tremors, severe hyperactivity and restless legs, atypical facial pain. And here's my personal favorite, the psychological effects of aspartame. severe depression, extreme irritability, anxiety attacks, severe insomnia, a severe aggravation of phobias, palpitations in the heart, shortness of breath, atypical chest pain, recent hypertension, high blood pressure, nausea, diarrhea, gross blood in the stools, abdominal pain, pain on swallowing, severe itching without a rash, severe lip and mouth reactions, hives, respiratory allergies, and we'll finish this up here. Problems with diabetes, menstrual changes, severe reduction or cessation of menstruation, paradoxic weight gain, marked weight loss, marked thinning or loss of hair, frequency of avoiding frequency of avoiding sunlight, burning and urination, excessive thirst, severe joint pains, bloating, and an increase in susceptibility to infection. So every time you guys...
Oh, the humanity!
Where did that come from? So anytime people drink the diet sodas or anything containing NutraSweet, this is what you open yourself up to the possibility of.
So that basically describes everything that could possibly go wrong with you.
Yes, and that was approved by the FDA, and it was introduced into the American diet by our good friend Don Rumsfeld. So I want to read this to you. In November of 1980, the country re-elected Ronald Reagan. Donald Rumsfeld, who was the former congressman from Skokie, the White House Chief of Staff, former Secretary of Defense since 1977, and the President of Searle, joined the Reagan transition team. A full-court press against the board decision began. In 1981, Rumsfeld told a sales meeting, according to one attendee, that he would call in his chips and get aspartame approved by the end of the year. In full knowledge of how harmful this stuff was, by the way. On January 25th of the day the new president took office, the previous FDA commissioner's authority was suspended, and the next month the commissioner's job went to Dr. Arthur Hull Hayes, who was bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical industry.
What you're telling me is the country's corrupt.
Yes, it is. The other really big one that I hear people singing the praises of is Splenda. Splenda, which the other name for Splenda would be DDT after it's been ingested. And again, it was created in much the same way. It's actually something like 1,000 times sweeter than sugar. It's not healthy for you at all. These adverse effects reported, and this was in holisticmed.com, shrunken thymus gland, enlarged liver and kidneys, atrophy of lymph follicles in the spleen and thymus, increased fecal weight, reduced growth weight, decreased red blood cell count, hyperplasia of the pelvis, extension of pregnancy period, aborted pregnancy, decreased fetal body weights and placental weights, and diarrhea.
Oh, the humanity!
Are you logged into to my site, Tom?
No, I'm not.
And who's playing the old humanity clips?
I would assume it's probably your third host. The second host. I'm the third one.
Oh, okay.
You'd assume correctly.
Oh. Why didn't you? Never mind. All right, so what do you guys think of this?
Well, after reading your article on progressive conservatism.blogspot.com.
Otherwise known as markradulich.com.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, it is.
Very nice. It's a little scary, but I'll probably try to cut out some of that diet soda. I don't really use that stuff ever anyway, but it's just in the diet soda. It makes me a little nervous. I don't really want gross blood in my stool, so I'd rather avoid that.
Yeah, I think somebody had asked me, I gotten some feedback from that book review, and they'd asked me what kind of changes are you making, and I immediately cut out the diet drinks. I said, well, this just isn't necessary. If you're going to believe the falsehood that diet drinks actually help you maintain your weight, I don't see the point. Just drink less of those things. I've limited, for a while I wasn't drinking soda at all, and now when I do drink soda, it's only under extreme circumstances, like when I'm driving home from Orlando and my eyes are shutting and we're going to crash into the ditch.
After the night of a really crappy club time.
Yes. So on those occasions I might drink a soda, but there's no point in trying to drink a diet soda and fake the funk when it's actually making things worse.
Yeah.
By the same token, this is one of those books that follows in the line of The Omnivore's Dilemma and Fast Food Nation and such, where you need to know what you're putting in your body, and you don't have to just start eating grass and never leave your house because everything's going to give you cancer, as my father would say. But you do have to be aware of what you're doing and, I think, maintain your diet appropriately. Nothing in excess is good for you. Even the things that they say are the best, if you do too much of them, yes, eventually they're going to cause problems. So I think the other lesson that this book teaches is that anything artificial is going to end up being worse for you than just limiting the use of the natural substance itself. Sugar by itself is fine. You just can't, eat bowls of it in your cereal all the time. You can't be drinking gallons and gallons of soda a day, or yes, you're going to degenerate your health. One other thing I wanted to add about this is if you are looking for an artificial sweetener, there is a natural one that exists. Unfortunately, again, the FDA has made it so that this product is not available in foodstuffs. It's only available as a natural supplement, and that is stevia, S-T-E-V-I-A, stevia. And you can get this at like a vitamin store or a GNC, and you can use that to replace sugar if you really want to. And it's just, another thing you can use as a natural sweetener, again, in limited amounts, is organic raw honey, which is what my wife uses.
I think what people need to realize is that Splenda, Sweet and Low, all this other crap, it wasn't created as a healthy alternative. It was created as a lower-calorie alternative. So people who like drinking soda want to lose weight, so they just switch to diet soda. And that's just simply not enough. And B, when they designed these things, and yes, they designed the food, there was never any concern about health. It just figures, all right, well, this has less calories, people will buy it. And it worked.
Yeah, and that's the thing. With the way our business community works in conjunction with the government, you don't have people looking out for the interest of the consumers. You have people looking to make the quickest buck the cheapest. And then you read these books, and that exposes them. And you really shouldn't be surprised that a lot of these alternatives that they're coming up with, that they're making windfall profits, are not good for you, whether it's the internal combustion engine or artificial sweeteners. And this goes on and on and on.
Also, consumers don't need people looking out for them. That's supposed to be the consumer's job.
Yeah, it would be nice if people
to look out for themselves.
Interest.
But, in reality, in America, don't you think people would probably almost accept the fact that they're poisoning themselves just to become thin, like with a shortcut way?
Without a doubt.
Just eating right and just hitting the gym?
I think the word you're looking for there is, are people lazy? And, John would certainly tell you, yes, they are.
Look at every diet commercial. They've got these new commercials for Nutrisystem, where basically they completely dumb down the concept of losing weight to the point where all you have to do is eat this food, and if you're a guy, you're going to have a better sex life, and if you're a woman, you're going to feel so sexy and be a size 2.
Yeah, I think Nutrisystem followed like the whole zone diet thing where they would literally just send the food to your house, so you actually don't even have to think about buying food anymore. They just feed you.
Yeah,
and you
don't need the exercise of leaving your house, getting into your car, and driving to the grocery store anymore.
No, that's overrated.
It's going to get to the point where you're going to be able to just download your meal through the computer and inject it directly into your stomach.
Yeah.
Like the Matrix.
Yes, like a FireWire cable into your stomach.
I need that for Warcraft, I think.
All right. Tom, at this time, I think, wants to leave the studio as quickly as possible for this next segment.
I've been waiting a week
for this.
That next
segment is.
I've been waiting a week.
I'm uncomfortable being even connected to this topic.
All right, folks. This is what you listen to the show for. The Report.
Chicken Boo, what's the matter with you? You don't act like the other chickens do. You wear a disguise to look like human guys, but you're not a man, you're a chicken Boo.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The Report, brought to you by worldpoultry.net. Genetically modified chickens may help with cancer.
The heck you say?
The heck I say. According to the article in worldpoultry.net, U.S. researchers have developed genetically modified chickens that can lay eggs which contain the proteins required to develop anti-cancer drugs.
Pardon?
Let me read that again. UK researchers have developed genetically modified chickens
Okay.
that can lay eggs, which contain proteins required to develop anti-cancer drugs. So you see the chickens lay the eggs, they take the proteins out of the eggs and use them for cancer drugs.
Well, why not just take the eggs and eat those?
I don't think that's the way it works. Let me continue.
Okay.
Birds at the Roslin Institute near Edinburgh, Scotland, have been modified to lay eggs. Okay, there's the genetically modified part.
Okay.
To lay eggs which contain MIR24, an antibody that has the potential to treat skin cancer. And others produce human interferon B-1A, which can be used to stop viruses from replicating in cells.
Okay.
The Institute claims it produced 5 generations of chickens. That's 5 generations of chickens, folks, that can produce useful levels of proteins for the development of life-saving cancer drugs in their eggs. The proteins are secreted into the egg whites and can then be extracted and purified.
So let me get this straight. They cloned the chicken.
Yes.
The chicken lays the eggs.
Well, I don't know if they cloned the chicken, but they genetically modified the chicken.
Okay, so they genetically modify / clone the chicken.
Right.
The chicken lays the egg.
Yes.
The egg cures cancer.
Not the egg itself. Having trouble with your mic over there?
So that means
I'm not here.
Okay.
That means they can't have an omelet?
No, you cannot just create an omelet and cure cancer. It doesn't work that way.
What about a nice quiche?
No, John. It's not. You can't use the eggs in a recipe and cure cancer.
Well, what about other diseases? Can they clone like the cure for AIDS?
I don't think they have a cure for AIDS yet.
I don't think the CIA is giving that out yet.
That and more on your next episode of Conspiracy or Quack. I thought you weren't here, by the way.
I couldn't resist a shot at the CIA.
Okay, so the idea, and this is where I think the story gets interesting to me. If, again, eggs that you can extract cancer drugs from aren't interesting enough. The idea of producing the proteins involved in treatments of flocks of laying hens means they can produce in bulk, they can produce cheaply, and indeed the raw material for this production system is quite literally chicken feed. So let me sum this up. They've got this army of chickens, right? They took one genetically modified chicken, created...
They've got a clone army of chickens.
Yes.
Chicken Run 2, Attack of the Clones.
Yes, exactly. Chicken Run 2, Attack of the Clones.
Like, there's a scientist somewhere who's going to execute Order 66. The chickens are all going to turn on the farmers.
Okay, I don't think they're going to turn on the farmers, and this story says nothing about the chickens owning lightsabers.
Maybe the chicken army is the answer to fighting the war in Iraq.
It'll
be unexpected.
This would be unexpected if you saw all of a sudden paratrooping genetically modified chickens coming at you.
Yeah, like, hey, Ahmed, look at the chicken. Oh, my God, they're attacking.
It'd be like the turkey drop from WKRP in Cincinnati.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. We're going to have that sound clip next week.
I wish we had it for this show, but then who would press the button? Me, you, Tom? I don't know. Everyone's running around my production studio pressing buttons today.
We can clone a chicken.
We can just clone a chicken to hit the buttons?
Yeah, Mr. Clucky, our new producer.
This show has way too many producers. I can tell you that right now. So they have this army of chickens.
A clone army of chickens.
They have an army of chickens that don't have lightsabers.
A clone army of chickens.
A cloned army of chickens, per se.
Thank you.
Do they have blasters?
No, they don't have blasters. I thought you weren't here.
Well, now I'm interested if we could use them as an elite fighting force.
There's nothing in this story that says anything about using them as a fighting force.
But you can, though. I mean, if you can clone this army of chickens, why not train them to fight?
You guys, suppose you could clone... I can't even look at him. I suppose you can use anything and clone it as an army and send it to Iraq. Tom has just left the studio.
I think if this goes on, Tom's going to leave Tampa.
Okay. The Roslin Institute, for those that don't know, is the same research center that cloned Dolly the sheep. Now, worldpoetry.net is an interesting website. It's an interesting website. I think it's from the Netherlands, actually, is where it originates. And they take a story like this and take all the funny parts out of it, and it's just the bare facts. But where I originally got this from was Yahoo News, and I swear to God, the difference between Yahoo News and WorldPoultry.net is like night and day. Because their headline, okay, WorldPoultry.net, genetically modified chickens may help with cancer. Yahoo News, freak chickens lay eggs loaded with drugs.
Woohoo!
They make it sound like the chickens are transporting Vicodin in their eggs.
Maybe
chickens running a meth lab. Genetically modified chickens can produce drugs in the whites of their eggs, scientists reported today. So again, no quiche, no egg Florentine, no cancer drug recipes here. You have to extract the proteins from the whites of the eggs.
Well, yeah, egg whites. That's what I have for breakfast every morning.
Okay, but again, you can't just fry up the egg or put it in your glass like Rocky and drink it.
Well, why not?
I'm figuring there's something having to do with... Okay, I never made my original point with the army of chickens because then we started thinking that the chickens could replace G.I. Joe and and fight Cobra and all of that. So let's get back on task here.
Yes,
they have this.
Now you know knowing is half the
So they have this. I'm not going to say army of chickens again because they'll just restart the whole stupid conversation.
Not to mention it's a clone army of chickens.
It's not a platoon of chickens. They have this large hen house of chickens.
A company of chickens.
It's not a company of chickens.
A band of chickens.
Tom can barely hold up his mic.
An insurgency of chickens.
Oh, my God. We have a call from 718. That's New York, right?
Yeah, it's Queens.
Queens. Do you know anyone in Queens that might be calling?
I could.
347-72364.
You just gave out the person's phone number on the air.
Okay, 718-347. You're on the air. Progressive Conservatism. How you doing?
Hi. Am I the 92nd caller? Did I win the tickets?
Yes, you did. Congratulations.
I'm giving away my wife. That was the agreement. Congratulations.
I was telling you that I was telling people that you would give away tickets when you were asleep last night, so you just got to call up some Broadway show tickets.
That's good, because I actually just bought a few shows, so I guess my wife won't go see all the great books by the Job Site Theater.
Oh, that would be perfect.
Oh, great. You're going to come to Tampa and come down and see that?
Yeah, well, actually, I had a question. With these cancer chicken eggs,
yes.
You said the eggs cure cancer. If you make a cake and use Splenda, which causes cancer, will it balance out?
John, you want to feel that one? By the way, this is Rob Rack.
Okay. Could you repeat the question, please? Mark's unprofessionalism. I couldn't hear it.
If you wind up making a cake using the cancer-curing eggs and the cancer-causing Splenda, do they balance each other out?
That's a good question. What kind of an icing? Is there extra in the icing?
I hadn't even thought of icing yet.
Well, what kind of sugar would you be using in the icing? Would you be using Splenda in the icing or just regular sugar?
I guess we'd have to use a non-carcinogenic sweetener for the icing.
Okay, so you can use stevia in the icing, Splenda in the cake with the cancer-curing eggs.
Right.
You know what I think it is? I think you might be able to cure the cancer, but you would still get the blood in the stool.
Right. I was just looking for that.
So you'd feel a lot better as far as the cancer, but you'd be crapping blood everywhere.
Okay, that's important. It's good to know.
As long as you don't have cancer.
Mr. Rack, I just want you to know that you have the dubious honor of being the first person to ever call in during the BUCGAW report.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Well, this was the most educational portion of the broadcast. It was something I couldn't miss out on.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Can I use that quote in further promotional material?
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
At least until I start running my campaign.
Are you running for something?
I plan on running for Senate, but not for another 14 years.
Okay. Well, just remember, this show. Come on this show. We're already standing behind Dennis Kucinich and Al Sharpton, so there's no reason why we can't stand behind you, too.
Not to mention, I already announced my presidency for 2012.
Best of luck, then.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for calling in, Rob.
You got it. Take care.
That was the infamous Rob Reck. Okay.
Where were we?
Who the hell knows?
I believe we were talking about the Clune platoon of chickens.
It's not a platoon.
In the hen house, codenamed the barracks.
It's not a barrack. Okay, let me finish this and conclude the BUCGAW report before we've completely lost the entire show.
Go ahead.
So they've got this, I don't even know what to call it anymore before one of you guys interrupts me and says it's having something to do with an army.
Just call it an army of chickens.
Okay, it's an army of chickens.
A clone army of chickens.
It's a clone army of chickens. And instead of creating a factory in which to produce the proteins for these cancer drugs, they found that it's cheaper and actually more productive to have a hen house full of chickens that can produce these proteins. That's the issue here. That's the big thrust of the story, is that they actually want to continue the process of using animals to create certain proteins for drugs, or
So
certain,
you can make clone armies,
certain elements for drugs.
You can make clone armies of any animal you want.
Yeah, and they have found actually, and I think this is actually pretty interesting having to do with the story, is that you can use animals in their natural reproductive cycles to create elements for all various kinds of drugs. This one happens to have been concentrating on cancer, but I think they've been able to do this with sheep. They've been able to do this with other barnyard critters and use their natural reproduction cycle to speed up the process of creating these chemicals. I find that to be considerably interesting. The problem is you have people like PETA and other pro-animal organizations that feel that using animals as production facilities is inhumane.
So once again, liberals standing in the way of progress.
Yes, exactly.
You know, standing in the way of me getting my spinal bifida kebabs.
You're not going to get a spinal bifida kebab. You're not going to get a cake made of cancer-curing eggs. This is not for food. They take the whites out. They take the proteins out of the egg whites. That's it. There isn't going to be a guy serving you a meal and saying, here, this will cure cancer.
But why not? I think there's a market there.
Well, then I think you need to call it the Roslin Institute.
No, we'll open a restaurant in the city called Cures.
Just to keep cures in your food?
Yes.
As opposed, that actually would work out great in New York City. They just banned trans fat. So what a marketing campaign. Out with the trans fat, in with the cancer food, cancer-curing food.
Yeah, that'd be a better market. Cancer curing and cancer causing.
Well, they already know it's cancer causing. And that, folks, was our very, very special, if not completely silly, report.
Chicken Boo, what's the matter with you? You don't act like the other chickens do. You wear a disguise to look like human guys, but you're not a man, you're a chicken Boo.
Okay, Tom. What was that?
That was everything I thought it was going to be.
And more. Okay. My wife has recently gone back to school. I don't think she ever really stopped, but as an adult and since graduating high school, she has returned to finish her bachelor's degree. Tom, after a rather long hiatus, went back to college to finish his bachelor's degree. I finished my bachelor's degree when I was supposed to, and then went back to school a few years later for my graduate degree, and I'll probably go again to get my Ph.D. in social work. And John doesn't like to read.
Yeah, I got my bachelor's degree, then I gave up reading.
So what does it all mean? Well, there's a variety of opinions on what it's like for adults to go back to school. And Tom has kind of learned me on the fact that more people than I originally thought are having a very difficult time returning to school as an adult who has already entered the workforce.
Well, I mean, I guess the first couple of points is why is it important to go to school? And, it goes without saying that the money is there. If you have a bachelor's degree, you're going to make 20 to 40% more than someone with just a high school degree. So that's a great incentive. If you're a minority or if you're a woman, your actual rates of earnings increases even are higher than that. White men, about 20 to 40%, and minorities and women go actually higher than that with a high school degree. If you have a bachelor's degree, you have like about an 84% chance that you're going to have a job, and if you're age 25 to 64. Excuse me. And even if you actually just have the paper that says a bachelor's degree, you're actually going to make more money than someone that actually has taken 4 years of credits. Now, why don't people go? Well, I'll talk from my own personal experience. It's hard. I've been doing school now, part-time and full-time, while working full-time for years. And I'm just starting to come up on getting a bachelor's degree. And it's a major sacrifice of your life. Not everyone can do it. I just ask the majority of my small circle of friends, I don't want to go back to school. School sucks. I'll never see my wife. I'll never see my significant other. I want to play Warcraft. I don't want to do any work. But so I can't tell you why people don't. It takes devotion. It takes a lot of devotion. And especially if you have a significant other, it takes a major sacrifice on both their parts to respect each other's sleeping patterns.
Well, I think school in general takes a amazing amount of self-discipline in order to maintain the schoolwork and to study and to do all the things you have to do. And, yeah, you do have to give up quite a lot. And that, I think, is a major strain in the country where people don't want to sacrifice and they don't want to be disciplined and they don't want to put the effort in. But I do want to take a phone call right now. Area code 315-406. You are on Progressive Conservatism. How you doing today?
Pretty good. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. What can I do for you?
I just logged in there, and you're talking about going back to school.
Yes.
Now, would that be like your master's or PhD?
It could be that, but in both the case of Tom and my wife, they're still working on their bachelor's degrees. There are cases where, life gets in the way, as it did for my wife, and she, had to stop going to school, and then she went back to finish her bachelor's degree, or in case where Tom, where I don't know what was the reason, but at the age at which we were going to college, straight out of high school, some people just aren't ready at that point.
That is very much true there, but the thing is, though, getting even a 4-year degree there, in the long run, it pays off there. That sacrifice, in certain cases there, is well worth it.
It very much is well worth the effort.
The difficulty is, I guess, people don't see that immediate payoff. That payoff is over time, and, people want to, play the lotto. They want to scratch the lotto and get their winnings immediately. They don't want to take the time to put the time in for school. Then over those next 5 to 10 years, they get that higher paying job. They get those promotions where only a person with a degree can get.
Well, see, that's the problem with our, society there. They want it now and not work at it, and the only way you're going to get good at anything there, you got to work at it, and eventually things will pan out for you.
Yep. I'm going to thank you for calling in, Jim. I think that actually goes back to our discussion on artificial sweeteners and whatnot, is everyone wants the fast buck now and they don't want to put the work in.
I mean, even he was bringing up the master's and PhD programs. Myself, I'll be done my BA at the end of this year, and it's pretty daunting knowing that it's going for psychology, that my PsyD program will take about 5 years. I'm going to be in my mid to late 30s when that's done, and that's pretty scary. It's pretty scary that I probably won't be able to work a real job during that time period, and I'm going to have to be living on student loans and the gifts of others, possibly. I want to send a donation. Feel free.
You should set up a website.
I may. I need a charitable website. And then, how do you tell your significant other, hey, I got to do school. I want to do something with myself. I want to put a doctor in front of my name. I want to be respectable.
Well, in the case of my wife, she can't leave the opticianry field until she finishes her bachelor's degree. I mean, there are jobs that she's overqualified for, extremely qualified for, and it doesn't matter because she's got, she needs that piece of paper.
That piece of paper equals money, and
I think it equals more opportunity than it does money, because certainly a bachelor's degree in social work equals, a nickel for the subway, but it does offer greater opportunities for jobs.
Right. I mean, it's psychology field is the same. Yeah, a 4-year degree is absolutely nothing. Everyone has a psych degree from college. It's useless. It's the people that put in those extra 5 years of being in supervised counseling of yourself being the counseled and you being the counselor. It's scary and hard.
What do you got on this, John?
I mean, I agree with everything you guys have said. I know anyone I know who has gone for their masters, all you hear about is like how stressed out they are and not sleeping, and just still work the full-time job and still go back. And I give them credit because I just simply don't have the discipline for it. I'll be honest.
Yeah, life would be a lot easier. I mean, I've known a few people that are actually able to do the amazing task of going for the 4-year degree and the master's straight through from high school. And God, am I jealous of them.
Mm-hmm.
I hate being a 30-year-old going for my BA and having to work a real job at the same time.
Well, I know the couple-year break I took between my bachelor's degree and my master's did me a world of good in the sense that I had good world experience, and you guys know my past pretty well, and while I faced some hardships during that 3-4 year period, I also learned a lot of things. That's where a lot of the discipline I got came from when I went and pursued my master's degree in social work, which had it not been for that break, I don't think I would have gone for the master's degree in social work at all. I don't even know if I would have become a social worker. Mm-hmm. But by the same token, while I needed a break, once I decided I was going to do the degree, that, everything else sort of fell to the wayside. There wasn't a whole lot I could do, and that would include living on my own. I couldn't maintain an apartment, especially living in New York, and going to school and working at the same time, at least not in the social work field. It just doesn't pay enough, and New York is prohibitively too expensive for that sort of thing.
Yeah, you can't maintain that no matter what field you're going into.
Maybe. I know we have a few friends that need to pursue master's degrees in engineering, and they don't, and part of the reason why, I think, is the prohibitive expensiveness of being in school and trying to pay your bills.
Well, and again, on top of that, and maintain a relationship. When I'm in school and my girlfriend is pursuing her master's, we see each other maybe twice a week for a significant period of time. The rest of the week is, hi, how you doing? Time to go to bed. And we're going to sleep because there's just no time to do anything else, no time to even watch like an hour episode of 24. There's no time. It's like you have to allot time on a Saturday to fit in a couple shows that you both like watching at the same time to sort of get back to seeing each other again. And that's scary for a lot of people. A lot of people can't handle that in a relationship. That's a really stressful aspect.
I know when Robin first went back to school and she had such a hard time with it, I don't think I gave her a lot of credit as far as, I would get annoyed with her when she would ask for help. And it was Tom actually that kind of clued me in and said, you know what, no, this is very hard for people and you shouldn't hold that against her. And I've tried to be a little bit more sympathetic to her plight since then. But like I said, there is an element of you do have to be disciplined and try. And college is hard. Grad school, this shouldn't be easy. You shouldn't be taking the phallus, or feminist gerontology,
or any woman studies classes.
And expect that you're gonna, you're just gonna breeze through, and then on top of that, expect a high-paying job when you're done. And I think, to sum this up, this is what the college experience in America is about right now: is a force between people who are using it appropriately and realizing that it's a tempering time in your life and an opportunity for you to learn self-discipline, which you may not have gotten as an adolescent, or people who completely misuse the time and sod off and don't do what they're supposed to, and then they find things to be very difficult as they proceed through adulthood. When you finally do get a job and you have to maintain that self-discipline and work independently, people do find it difficult.
Yeah, because there's actually, I was watching, PBS had a documentary on what they call Generation Next, where they were talking about, people between the ages of 15 and 25, where they brought that up about how they want the instant gratification. And, they don't want to have to work, and if they don't like their job after 2 months, they'll move on to something else. And their excuse for it is like, well, look at our heroes like Lindsay Lohan and P. Diddy. We see them partying all the time. That's what we want. Which is stupid because as much as I can't stand Sean Combs, the man owns his own business. He created his own business. He worked at creating his own empire. So the fact that he's out partying is because he owns like 8 different businesses.
Yeah, he's earned it.
Yeah, it's not like he woke up one morning, someone handed him like a $30 billion empire and said, all right, now go off to, Prague.
Yeah, I was going to say, nothing makes you feel like, I don't know if this is necessarily a good thing. Nothing will make you feel more like an adult than going into a classroom, which I had the dubious distinction of feeling last spring semester, where I was actually, I think, older than my teacher, who was like a grad student. She was working on her PhD and doing some teaching in the process, and I think I may have been a few months older than her. So nothing will make you feel like more than an adult than being older than your teacher or having to listen to 19-year-olds talk about their parties in the weekends and cutting class 90% of the time and still passing and getting good grades.
That actually kind of happened to my mom, because when she went back when she started going for a master's, she was in classes with people who graduated high school with me, and then last semester she was in class with someone who graduated high school with my sister, who's 4 years younger.
Yeah, it's so bright. You have a whole different perception on what class is especially when you're paying your own bill. You don't have your parents paying for it. When you know that student loan payment's coming in at some point in the future and it's not going to your mom, you have a whole different appreciation for the school process. And once you start, you can't stop because you're paying for it. You can't just give up on it because, well, I'll try again next semester. I want to take it easy this semester, take a break.
I will say this. I mean, my first year of college was nothing spectacular. I think I failed a class. I dropped a few classes, and I think my father pulling me to the side and saying, you have one semester to fix this or you're paying back all the money we just spent on you was the beginning of me realizing how serious this was. And once I had to pay for it myself, which was grad school, now I'm staring at a $40,000 student loan. You better take it seriously. I couldn't afford not to take it seriously because I needed to not fail anything and get the hell out of school. Not to mention the fact that when you finally do grow up and you do want to do something else with your life, a failure in college is not something you can just wash under the rug. They look at that, and that's the determining factor between you and the guy next to you or the idiot next to you, per se, getting into that program. I mean, I know in USF is one of the few schools in the Tampa area that offers a doctoral program in social work. And if I got to compete with somebody who had all A's and I had A's, B's, and 1 C, I'm probably not going to get in. That's the reality of it.
But it's actually kind of funny getting the perspective of, now that we're older, getting the perspective of going back to school, because I remember when, like, at least Mark, when you and I were at Old Westbury, we couldn't stand the back-to-school people.
Yep, and now we are the back-to-school people.
Yeah, they'd sit in the front of the class. They'd completely dominate the class. The teachers would cater the class to them, but now you kind of understand why.
Yeah.
Because clearly, I mean, I got to tell you, I sit in the front of the class or close to. I want to make just because I'm in working towards it someday a PhD, I have to have good grades. I need, in medical fields and law fields, your grades matter. And I got to make sure I have a good GPA at the end. And for some teachers, being in that front and making sure they see your face every day and chiming in here and there, makes a hell of a lot of a difference over the kid that sits in the back with, his hoodie over his head and is listening to his iTunes.
Yeah.
Or the two guys in the back of the classroom talking about wrestling. Oh, wait, that was me and you.
Well, yeah,
and on that note...
Now you see that the professor, it's like, all right, now I could choose to call on Tom, who's attentive, learning, has intelligent things to add to the class, and wants to be here, or I can call on Susie, who's only here because her parents are paying for her tuition.
Yeah, I mean, it shows up. When they're looking at their grade book and they actually know who you are, they see your name and actually, oh, I know that guy. That's worth something. I mean, some teachers are going to be a little bit more Nazi-ish and are going to, oh, well, you have 30% based on this test, 30% of that test, and they're just making it a math game. Most teachers aren't doing that. Most teachers are taking that into account. And I can tell you from my own grades, I've definitely gotten grades I haven't deserved, and it's been from schmoozing teachers.
There's nothing wrong with a good schmooze. Okay, I want to thank Tom for being in the studio today. Tom, how'd you like being on the show?
It was great. I'm a little disappointed we couldn't get into the UFC talk, but that's all right. It's a big weekend.
There's always next week.
This Saturday is a big pay-per-view. Everyone should be watching it.
And it's the first one in high definition.
Is it really?
Yep.
I didn't even know that's true. And you have the entrance into the UFC from two major pride fighters, Quentin Rampage Jackson and Crow Cop, who may actually give some legitimacy to the heavyweight division of the UFC.
If they're not kneeling on each other and punching each other in the face for an hour and a half, maybe I'll watch.
But that's entertainment. See, Tom, this is what happens after you get married. All of a sudden, you don't like fighting anymore.
That's sad.
It's not that I don't like fighting. It's two guys kneeling on each other and punching each other in the face.
Well, no, generally it's one guy kneeling on the other punching him in the face, but that's hardly the issue here.
I could have been a UFC fighter when I was in elementary school because that's what I did to a kid.
Probably not. I don't think you could maintain the body control to keep someone below you. There's a lot more to it than just someone just sitting on somebody. Try getting one of them off of you. Good luck.
Okay, the actual getting to that point, though, may be interesting and fun to watch, but once you're in the kneel, prone, open face position, that's the end of it for me. I find it to be boring because you're just punching the guy in the face until it's over.
But that's when the match ends, because once you get them out and you get a couple elbows in the head, the referee stops the fight.
It takes all of 30 seconds the last time I watched the UFC.
When was that, 1999?
Yeah, it is. I don't know what you're watching. That's not what happens.
Maybe I'll give it another chance because Lord knows the WWE isn't keeping me very interested anymore.
Exactly. I'm telling you, February 3rd, high definition.
All right, and on that note, for the third time, once again, thank you for being on the show. Hopefully you'll actually call in from now on and be a part of the discussion. At the very least, you can talk to John about the UFC. Next week on Progressive Conservatism Live, we will analyze the President's State of the Union speech. Hopefully people will actually watch it and not some stupid sitcom.
Mm-hmm. Is it interfering with American Idol?
I guess no one's going to watch it then.
Well, no, I'm recording American Idol. I'm going to watch the President.
You'll be in the minority. And we will also, I'm going to address this new law that either was passed or they're trying to pass about how in California you can't use corporal punishment. I don't have an issue so much with the law as I have with the conservatives all jumping on the same bandwagon about how wonderful it is to hit your kids and all these great parenting instructions you get from conservatives who half of them have problems parenting their own kids themselves. Rush Limbaugh, I'm looking in your direction. The BUCGAW report, and I'm going to discuss in great detail the fairness doctrine as proposed by our man, Congressman Kucinich.
Not to mention the wild sex life of zoo animals.
Yes. Well, a new segment will be on the show next week, which you must tune in for, because if you like the BUCGAW report, you're going to love the wild sex lives of zoo animals.
Are you actually taking away from some of your BUCGAW report to do the wild sex escapades of zoo animals? Or
It even has its own sound effect.
Is this in addition to your chicken report?
It's not the chicken report. It's the BUCGAW report.
Yeah, I'm not doing that noise.
Why not?
Because I'm not.
Okay.
That's too much self-pride.
There's nothing non-prideful about the BUCGAW report. But
I fully admit that I have no self-pride.
You don't help. The wild sex life of zoo animals will be in addition to the BUCGAW report.
I'm sure the listeners will be thrilled that they're not going to lose out on that.
Yes. Wow. So when we said this was a train wreck, we really weren't kidding, huh?
Well, you have to wait. Maybe people will email in and say it's the best show ever.
Oh, I hope. And on that note, folks, for the fourth time, folks, I'm gonna go take a nap. Have a good day.